Hey everyone, this is Meghna, the co-founder of Teen Chapter. We at Teen Chapter are building a holistic teenagers community where we not only focus on internships, network, career, resources, opportunities, etc., but we also bring stories of teenagers forward who are going to leading universities of the world or starting their own organizations. As part of that, today we have Pranav, a rising sophomore at Yale University, majoring in global affairs. Hey Pranav, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So, Pranav, without any further ado, let's get into the interview. So, tell our viewers a bit about your high school journey, your scores, what curriculum you did, and all that.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm originally from Plano, Texas. I went to Jasper High School and then Plano West. And so as for scores, I got a 1590 on my SAT and then a 1520 out of 1520 for the PSAT. As for curriculum, I'd say that our school operated on like an AP syllabus. And so there were a lot of classes available that were kind of regular, just like not honors or AP. Then there were honors classes, which were a step up, and then AP or advanced placement classes. So I would try to take like a good mix of those classes, especially in advanced placement classes where I could and where it was balanceable. Um, I would say that in terms of the kind of area of focus I wanted to go into because it was more global affairs oriented, I found myself taking a lot more advanced classes in kind of that side of things, like for example, AP microeconomics or macroeconomics, kind of in that social science field. But there's also options for other extracurriculars. So big things that I did were debate and choir. So both of these I continued all 4 years of high school. And those were important classes that I maintained throughout the kind of curriculum of our school. And I would say that our school was really was really big on focusing on giving options on these extracurricular sides. So you see debate, choir, orchestra, band, and many other options. So those are some features I'd say of our curriculum.
That's amazing. So, what are some AP courses that you took in your junior and senior year?
Yeah, for sure. Junior year, I would say AP Statistics, AP Art History, AP like AP US History and AP Language. We had like a combined class for that for AP English Language and US History. And then senior year, it was online for us, so it was a little bit weird. But the ones I did take were like AP Environmental Science, AP Micro and Macroeconomics, AP Spanish Language. Um, and a few others I would say. So those and AP Computer Science A. And I remember so our school was a little unique in that even earlier on you could take AP classes. So for example, in ninth grade I took AP Human Geography, and then in 10th I was able to take AP European History, World History, and then Calculus. BC were the ones I took.
Wow, those are some interesting subjects or courses to hear. Pranav, did you do any research projects or any other? Do you want to touch upon your extracurriculars a bit?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So for research itself, because I wasn't as like STEM oriented, I didn't do any like kind of like research project itself in high school. The summer after my senior year, I did do kind of like a team kind of international research project through the International Socioeconomics Laboratory, and we researched like child health services and policies in Nepal. I do think that that option is available, like that program is available for high schoolers as well. So if there's people that are interested, that's something to look at. But I guess to answer your question about like extracurriculars more broadly, I would say, yeah, the biggest ones were definitely speech and debate and then choir. Speech and debate was like a big one. I competed in extemporaneous speaking, which is like one key activity within speech and debate. Um, I also was I was also the president and founder of the Junior World Affairs chapter at our school. So that's basically a club kind of focused on improving knowledge and awareness in global affairs. And specifically, we had this. There's this national competition called like the Academic World Quest competition. So that's kind of like a team quiz competition on global affairs. So I was like the captain of our team and all of that. So that was something I did. Another extracurricular was the Junior State of America. That was another school club. I was like one of the officers of that, and kind of like a regional administrator of that. And so that focuses a little bit more on kind of increasing youth political awareness in the US. And so that was another club I was involved in. And then other big extracurriculars. So I mentioned choir. So that was something I was involved in since like third grade. So just keeping that going. I found it enjoyable. And then the last really big one I would say was this nonprofit organization. There were a group of individuals from 2 years older than us that started this organization called the Be the Light Youth Association, and so so this organization we called it BTL, really focused on providing speech and debate classes to kind of youth in the community, and then donating the proceeds from those classes to charities for disadvantaged children. So that was a really good idea that they started. And so they passed that on to us. And so I was able to lead that for a few years with two of my other friends. And so that was really like a big time commitment in terms of organizing and holding those classes, and also figuring out like, where we can donate, new initiatives, things like that. And then until 10th grade, I continued Taekwondo, but like I quit that once I was done because I just wanted to get it over with. But the ones I mentioned earlier, I would say are the bigger ones.
So out of all this, what's your favorite extracurricular, or what's something that you enjoyed the most?
Definitely, speech and debate was the most fun, because that was the one. Well, that was definitely the one I spent like the most time in by far,
Hmm.
and so I enjoyed that the most for a few reasons. I think one, it was the one where I had like a lot of friends. Like I think like that was the community I joined, and so those people are still like some of my closest friends today. So that meeting a group of people like that was awesome, and we would have tournaments like every weekend. So being able to spend time with them every weekend was awesome, and also because that's how I found my interest in kind of global affairs and foreign policy and stuff, because that's what we were often having to speak about. And so I would say that like that was really enjoyable because that was just a passion of mine as well. So I think like in high school that was like my big focus, and a lot of the other things I did were either kind of related to that area, which you saw with some of those clubs and like the nonprofit I mentioned, or they weren't as like big focuses in my kind of high school time.
That's really good to know. Even I love debates and all that. I was actively participating in my school, but then we did not
Oh,
have a
nice.
lot of resources and opportunities, so I couldn't go to like higher levels or expand of what I wanted to do. So it just stopped right there. But even now, I love talking or debating and all that. Yeah. And what are some universities that you applied to apart from Yale?
So honestly, because it was the COVID year, especially, I took the kind of like shotgun approach where like apply everywhere. So like I applied to like every Ivy, Berkeley, UT Austin. I applied to so at that point in time, I wasn't sure if I wanted to go into global affairs or like business. So I applied to their like business honors program. Now I know I don't want to go into that, but that was something I considered then. Vanderbilt, and UT Dallas, I believe, were all of them. And UCLA as well. Yeah, those are all of them, I believe. I definitely like. I came in. Oh no, there was some more. Sorry, I applied to Duke as well, Georgetown. Um, yeah, for now, let's just go with that. So I applied to a lot. I think I was planning to apply to even more. I think that was especially because that was the year of COVID. And so I was just like,
Right.
with so many more applicants with every school, I wasn't sure how things would be. So I just kind of took a brute force approach. And so, yeah.
So how many? So which universities did you get into out of all the ones that you applied to?
Yeah, so of those, not many. So I'm thankful I got into Yale because that was like a really strong choice of the ones I did get into. So I was really happy to get into that. Outside of Yale, as far as I remember, I got into Berkeley, the UT Austin's like business honors program, Vanderbilt, UCLA, and UT Dallas, I believe, were all of them. It was an interesting process because on Ivy Day, since I applied to every single one, it was a lot of bad news, and then we finally opened Yale, and that was good news. So that was good. So I guess like moral of the story: don't get discouraged by like losses somewhere else. You'll find some success. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, Yale is such a great school. It's even
Yeah,
one of
of
my
course, I'm so happy.
like top three schools for my graduate programs.
Mhm.
And what made you go for global affairs or international relations or areas in that line? So, what caused you that interest?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I would say speech and debate was a big factor, but specifically, yeah, like I think when we when we had to talk about those topics a lot in speech and debate, um, I'd have to stay well informed about those topics. So to make sure I could uh,
Right,
do well in these events, I'd have to read the news like every day, stay updated on what was going on in the U.S. and the world, and then I would so the type of speech like event that I did in speech and debate was called I mentioned extemporaneous speaking, right? So often the way that works is that you often get like questions about some different like world issue, and then you have to prep within 30 minutes like a 7-minute speech answering that question about some random world issue or something like that, right?
right,
So I really like that process because I really like the process of kind of taking all this information that was so complex and nuanced about global issues, because there's just so many different facets, whether it's like political, economic, like strategic, all of those factors, and then taking all of that and then analyzing it to create. Especially, I liked creating solutions to a lot of these issues. I like the process of brainstorming solutions to world issues, and I just think that there's so much in the world that we can improve and we can address, and that requires being involved in this field, right? So that really, that kind of process that speech and debate really kickstarted was definitely the inspiration for me to go into global affairs, especially to go into government, where I think that I can have a more direct ability to make an impact on these issues.
right. Absolutely makes sense. And you also mentioned you're currently interning at Hudson Institute, right? So,
Right.
the research you're doing there, is it somewhat similar to what you aspire to become, or is it aligning with your degree?
Yeah, for sure. So it's South and Central Asia research. So it's very like Hudson Institute is a very kind of like foreign policy and national security focused think tank. So they do a lot of research on that field. So I'm working with Dr. Aparna Pandey and Ambassador Hussein Haqqani, researching a lot of kind of South Asia, Southeast Asia, China, and all of that kind of area issues. Yeah, it actually does go like really well with my interest because it's like a more kind of focused version of the broader global affairs idea, right? And it definitely tracks with my interests, because I think within foreign policy, I'm most interested in like Indo-Pacific security, and I think that the research that we've done is very much kind of in that area. Like today, for example, I was looking at like former like Prime Minister Shinzo Abe's contributions to the idea of the Indo-Pacific and the Quad idea that we're seeing a lot more today, things like that. So very much in that area, and I really like enjoy looking at that for sure.
That's amazing. And getting back to the university topic, what do you think a good application is while applying to an Ivy League, especially Yale?
Ooh, okay, good question. Good question. It's tough, and I think like there's because I can't like speak for what the admissions officers will look for. Definitely like take what I say with a grain of salt, and it's not like what they actually. It's not necessarily what they might actually look at, right? But from my experience, I think some good pointers. Um, One is definitely create a narrative, right? I think that um, you want to be somebody that's easy to remember, and that and the way that the process works, from what I've heard in a lot of these schools, is that you have a few admissions officers that read your like file, and then they take all these files and they choose some that I believe they choose some that they like a lot more, and then but for you to actually get into the school, these officers have to convince a broader panel of people that your file is good. So you have to be somebody that they can easily like advocate for, right? And so
Right.
it's a lot harder to advocate for somebody who doesn't have a clear narrative, right? So I think really focusing on kind of tying your application together, and showing how you've been able to and showing why you're somebody that they can be proud of of having as a student is really big, right? I think other things are, I mean, this is common advice, but I think in terms of the way you show things on like on the like the activity section and the extracurricular section, things like that, really focus on showing impact. I think that's really big. Because people who just say broad general things like, oh, I started this club, like, oh, I just like increased awareness or things like that, I like volunteered, it doesn't really show much, right? So I think showing tangible, concrete impact as much as you can, and numbers where possible, clear examples where possible, is another big thing. What else? I think, yeah, I think really be yourself. I think don't try to create don't try to like you'll see a lot of, once you read a lot of these sample essays and things like that, you often try to model their style or like write an essay like them. It doesn't like, I don't think that that's a good strategy, because then you're just modeling somebody else and you're not really focusing on the way you are, right? So I like, for example, my essay was about like the way I started my college essay, was really, it was like Mr. Bean. Like it was about me watching Mr. Bean in like third grade. So like that's very like off, that's very different, right? And that worked all right. So I think do what you think is interesting and what you think can show your personality well. And I think, remember sorry, this is a little bit rambling, but just to kind of looking at what I remember. I think another thing that they like to see is personality and like character as much as they can, because at least from what I've seen, it looks like, if they can, you don't want to just seem like, oh, like the smart person, right? Because they're getting thousands of smart applicants, right? But if they think like, oh, you're genuinely like a good person who's compassionate and caring, and also smart and also interested in making an impact in these specific fields, that kind of brings an application together, and it really makes you stand out more. So I think don't be afraid to show those like soft skills and to show the kind of character and personality aspect, and to be vulnerable in your essays, because like talking about how you won might not necessarily be the way to really show your personality. Maybe it's talking about the way you lost, or the way you kind of went up from failures or went up from hard times in your life, or learned something new that was small but like really important to you. Things like that can all be really good ideas. But yeah, I mean, let me know if there's anything more you want me to add, but those are just some ideas like off the top of my head.
That's a great piece of advice as well in between. And also, if there's any essay that starts with Mr. Bean, I would love to read it. I love Mr. Bean. It was my childhood. So yeah, that's an amazing way to start an essay. And whatever you said makes sense in terms of how your application should be, or especially showing not how you won, but your journey towards your winning
Right.
or failure or something like that. So, and what you have learned from it. So that completely makes sense. And you've mentioned about your SAT scores in the beginning. I was like, oh my God, full scores. I think your PSAT was,
PSAT was full, and then one question wrong on SAT.
wow. How did you manage to get full score, or like almost
I
full?
mean, God's grace. But I think I would say, so the way, there's a lot of approaches to this. I think one kind of thing that I was grateful for in my community is we have something called Karen Dillard's. It's like a kind of prep service, and so a lot of students in our area go there to learn strategies and do practice tests. So I signed up for that. Yeah, my parents kind of put me in that, I think, end of or midway through 10th grade. And so, well, like we really didn't do much until like we didn't really go, I didn't go often until summer before junior year. That's when I really, really practiced. And I think, I mean, it's a lot of practice, I think, and a lot of like one, okay, I guess in terms of tips that are kind of useful, one, like using the official test is really big. I think like I've used non-official tests and then felt really bad because I've scored terribly, or done really well and I'm like, I'm ready to go, and then not be ready. So it just depends, right? So really take the official test. But I think a bit more specific pieces of advice can be like, one thing I did was I found this tip online where it's like, keep a notebook where all you do in this notebook, so I have like have sections for every section of the SAT, and then in this notebook, every question you miss on a test, write down that question, write down what you put as the wrong answers, and why you got it wrong. That's like, so like question that what I just said, and then the third section of that paper would be what you will do next time to get questions like that, right? And I did that because that helped me like identify what exactly I needed to fix and like not repeat those mistakes as much, so it's a very like intentional and targeted form of practice, because just doing practice tests is not enough. And I think it's important to, and it's important because it helped me because I could create like very personalized like exercises or drills or approaches that I needed to use to do well on that question next time. So like I could be like, oh, on this type of question, I'm going to read this first and then do it this way, and maybe that will work, right? So that was one thing I did. What else? I mean, a lot of the other strategies are, I think, like section focused. Like and that you can find like online and all that. But I think the most important thing, I think, is like I would say, yeah, start, I think, summer before junior year to practice, and then make sure that the way you practice is very intentional, targeted, and fixing specific things. And if you realize that there's like a conceptual problem, that like a specific concept is not working, make sure you fix that, obviously. Because once you really get the concepts, I think that the SAT is really like, I can't speak for the ACT because I didn't take it, but SAT, I think is very much like there's a strategy to it. There's like I don't want to say trick, but there's like an approach to it, right? That helps out, I think.
Right. I actually wanted to give SAT. I started my preparation, but ended up not giving it because I was scared.
Oh, okay.
And because I study in India, we didn't really need SAT for most of the colleges here. So even when I applied to a few American colleges that I got into, I applied as a test optional student, so I did not have to give the test.
Oh, okay, that's good.
Yeah. So you're also a recipient of the Calvin College Presidential Scholarship, right? So would you like to talk a bit about it? Have you got it? What is that scholarship basically? And is it only for American citizens, or is it also for international students?
Yeah, for sure. So it's called the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Scholarship, and so basically it's done by the Calvin Coolidge Presidential Foundation. So he was like a former U.S. president, and so it's like a foundation led by people who believe in his values and like descendants and all of that. And so the scholarship is basically it's a full ride merit scholarship to any U.S. college or university. Really unique because it's like, as far as I know, one of the few, if not only, like full ride merit scholarship. So like everybody has a very equal chance on that. And I think that's a big one. And I think in terms of how I found it, I really found it by luck, because a week and a half before the application deadline, I was just coincidentally on like a friend, like an older friend's LinkedIn page, and like one line I saw that he was like a Coolidge senator, which means that he was top 100, but not a scholarship recipient, but he was top 100. But I didn't know what that was, so I just Googled it, and I was like, "Oh, this is really cool," but I only have 1.5 weeks, right? So. Yeah, I mean, so the process for that is, I believe it's 3 essays that you have to write. You have to read his like autobiography, which isn't too long, but you have to read his autobiography and learn a little bit about his life, and then write some different essays, kind of related to some different related to topics about yourself, and also about what you think he would do about a specific issue. It changes every year. That was how it was for me, basically. Yeah, so they cover everything. That like funding wise, they cover everything. So that's really, really, really amazing. Really thankful for that. And you mentioned, what other questions did you ask?
Yeah, I asked, is it only for a particular nationality, or is it for international students as well?
So I'm not entirely sure. So I know it's only U.S. college or university. I'm pretty sure, I think you do need to be a U.S. permanent resident,
Okay.
or so not citizen, because I'm not a citizen, so just permanent resident. So I was still able to get it, and so that was fine. But I think it is worth double checking if that policy is correct or if they've changed that or whatever. So make sure to look at that. Yeah, and so it's like a long process. Oh, you need like a recommendation letter, and I applied, I think, in January, and I found out that I got it in like July, and there were multiple rounds of processes. Like because it's a lot of applicants. It's increasing every year since it's a new scholarship. My year, it was like 3,400 applicants. and then they choose 4 from that.
Wow.
But now it's like 5,000 or something. And they're choosing like 5 from that. Uh, it's a tough one. But it's really worthwhile. And then I mean, the way it works now is, like I've met an amazing community of other scholars, and every year for the like U.S. Independence Day, the 4th of July, like 6 days, we have to go to Vermont, and like there's like a summit there. We help them out with some things. We listen to some seminars. We kind of bond and interact and stuff. So it's a good time, and I've definitely been really, really grateful for that, for sure.
Yeah, that sounds very competitive, and also congratulations for
Thank
getting
you.
it, because like 40,000 people and 4 members getting selected is an
No,
amazing.
not 40,000, 4,000.
Oh, 4,000. Oh, okay.
40 is a little crazy.
Exactly. That's what I was thinking. Like 40,000, 50,000, and only 4 or 5 people getting selected is
Oh,
kind of,
it's crazy.
yeah. But still, it's an amazing achievement.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
And do you know any other scholarships that are exclusively available for international students, either like 50% tuition waiver or full ride or something like that?
Personally, I don't. I know they exist at the graduate level, but I don't know. Like, I haven't done research on it for undergraduate, so not sure.
Okay, amazing. So what are your future plans after graduating from Yale? Do you want to go for a graduate degree, work somewhere? What do you?
Yeah, I definitely want to get a graduate degree in. I'm not sure, but I think kind of international security, or like some field within international relations. I think would be a good area to take a master's in. I think long term, I really want to get into government, and to be really involved within foreign policy. I'm not sure exactly where. There's a lot of options. I think like State Department is really cool. I think the intelligence community is really interesting. A lot of different areas there, and so definitely hoping to go into that area long term. I think my like dream job has always been like Secretary of State, and something like that would be really cool. So yeah, we'll see. But that's the kind of long term goal, I think. Yeah.
Right. So what is your dream school for your graduate degree?
It's a tough question. I don't. So I think because I'm going into the international affairs kind of area, I think that from what I've heard, the 2 best schools in this field are Georgetown and Harvard. So I don't know which one, but one of those would be really nice. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm very sure you'll get into both of them.
Thank you. We'll see.
Right. So we've come to the end of the conversation, Pranav. So do you have any advice for prospective students applying to Yale?
Yeah, for sure. I think in terms of advice, it's very broad, right? I think there's a lot of there's a few things I guess I could touch on. I think one thing is approach, and this is like a kind of throughout high school type of thing. I guess what I've heard in terms of approaches to getting into good schools is there's 2 main kind of different approaches that people take. One approach is the kind of well-rounded approach. And both of these approaches, I know people at Yale that have taken both of these approaches. Both are fine. The well-rounded approach is, especially for people who are not as sure what area they want to go into, which is perfectly fine because it's high school, right? I think doing well in a lot of different areas, like having a decent amount of impact in a lot of different areas, showing your commitment to those things, and making sure that all of those areas that you have done a good amount of work in and made a good amount of impact in, that those are areas you have a good reason for doing. Because there are people who hear the well-rounded thing and they just do a lot of random stuff, even that they're not interested in it, right? Not the approach you should do, right? So I think as long as you're interested in these different things, doing a lot of good things in a lot of these areas, not necessarily like overly focusing on one area, but doing well in a lot of different things. So that's one approach. You can take that. The other approach, I try to focus a little bit more on this approach, is the spike approach. So that's the approach where I think like if there's one area that you're really interested in, or really like you think that that's kind of the area you love the most. For me, that was the kind of global affairs, kind of speech and debate, that area. You really focus your time on that a lot, and you try to get as great achievements and as much success as possible in that area. And that does stand out as well, right? And that's obviously very tough because that is kind of putting all your eggs in one basket type of thing. But on the flip side, if you do really well in that, that does seem really, really good, right? So that's the approach I took, is focusing on speech and debate. I think like that kind of 100% focus on that area was what allowed me to be more successful in speech and debate. Senior year, like I was able to win nationals and things like that. That was a result of that approach, right? And so two different options. I think choose whichever, but the biggest thing I think for both is having a reason for doing what you do, right? If you can't justify what you do outside of the justification being I did it for college apps, it's not a good thing to do. I think it's not a good activity to include, right? So that's one thing. And other advice is like this is a different vein of advice, but I think this is really important for people in high school is like no matter where you go, you'll be okay. I think that's like the really big thing. I think when you're in the process, it seems very stressful and very like, oh my God, I have to get in here. What, like, you know, I have to do all this and do that. But then when you get out of the process and you look back, you're like, I'm going to be perfectly fine wherever I go, as long as I put in the effort in my place, right? Maybe there's some areas I might have to do a little bit more work in or a little bit less work in, but still, if I had that ambition and drive, like I'm going to be fine, right? So I think that should I think definitely one thing is relax, you know, spend time, you know, with friends, family, do those fun things, take time for yourself every day. Don't just spend time like there. I know so many people in this process who spend their, you know, entire high school like sleeping like 4 hours a day, like you know, they're not eating, they're not sleeping, they're like just like holed up in their room doing their homework. And maybe they do, I mean, maybe some of these people do succeed, right? But I think like maybe they do end up getting into these good schools, but the process was so miserable that was it really worth it is a question, right? And I think you're sacrificing your health, your happiness in that process. So I think the biggest thing in this process, like high school is definitely where a lot of people fall into that trap. I think really focus on, really take time to recenter yourself, reground yourself, and to kind of remind yourself that like I said, no matter what, you'll be fine. And two, just to enjoy and just to find and that the things that you do should be things that you actually enjoy. Don't do things just for the application. Do it because you actually enjoy doing it. Like I couldn't have spent hours and hours on speech and debate if I didn't actually like doing that, right? So yeah, I think those are the two biggest, those are the two main pieces of advice. But yeah, just relax, like you'll be fine is I think the biggest takeaway I would say overall.
Right. And also that's wonderful advice again. And I completely agree with what you said while coming to like specializing in one field instead of just putting your mind and body in every field. And it becomes pretty visible to the person who sees your application as well. You know, if you're just trying out everything for the sake of having a well-rounded application, or if you're actually interested in some particular field and you want to specialize in it, that also shows your dedication, determination towards what you're passionate about.
Right. I think, yeah, I just think one thing is, like either approach you take, I guess, like don't go into it thinking I'm planning on doing a certain approach. Instead, like just see what you're interested in, see what you're passionate about, and just go accordingly. And don't do the thing where you just do everything for the sake of application. If you are just by nature, like I know so many people at Yale that are very interdisciplinary, like they're interested in like AI and computer science, but at the same time, they're interested in like economics and they're interested in business. So very different areas, but they're looking at both at the same time. They're still really successful at both of those things. So those are examples. So being interdisciplinary is also a really good thing. Yeah, whichever one works for you, whichever one you are interested in, whichever one fits your path and your passion, go for that. And don't try to make yourself what you think the application readers want you to be, because more often than not, you're wrong. Like that's not what they want you to be. They just want you to be yourself.
Right. Amazing. It was great talking to you. Amazing insights. And thank you so much, Pranav, for being part of the conversation. It's been so great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And thank you so much for having me. And yeah, and let me know if you have any questions. I'm happy to help for sure.
Definitely. Thank you.